Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pacharine Nevasesha Sanyavadi Pastachade Shatani. Hare Krishna. Jai. So this evening we will hear a little something about Ramananda Roy, who today is the disappearance day anniversary. Not much is spoken normally about Ramananda Roy. As you probably know, he is one of the most confidential associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri, it is stated, had 3.5 most confidential associates. Amongst them, Ramananda Roy, Swarup Damodar, Sikhi Mahiti, and Sikhi Mahiti's sister, Madhavi, were considered his, believe it or not, his most confidential associates. Why confidential? Well, of course, we cannot enter at this stage onto these realms of relationships, but we can hear about them. And the different levels where Lord Chaitanya, or even Krishna himself, of course, reciprocates as we surrender unto him. I reward accordingly. The reward is not, well, it will be for a materialist, it might be a material reward, but on the spiritual path, it's the Lord reciprocating with the devotees accordingly, reciprocating on whatever level of consciousness we are on. For the gross materialist, it's a totally material reciprocation, based upon God being the order supplier, and they see themselves as the enjoyers. That's on the material platform. And for those who reject that relationship altogether, but do not want to develop a spiritual relationship with God, then the Lord reciprocates with them by allowing, say, the philosophy of monism or impersonalism to pervade their consciousness, and they aspire to merge into the Brahma Jyoti. And for those who like to worship God purely, very purely, following the instructions of Scripture and Guru and Sadhu, but in a very reverential way, in an Almighty God, Almighty way, not asking anything but the opportunity to serve Him, they may attain to the Vaikunthas, and so on, all the way up to, of course, Golok, to the spiritual realm, all the spiritual realm, you could say, but the highest platform in the spiritual realm. So some of Lord Chaitanya's associates, in fact, most of his intimate associates, of course, were his eternal associates. They weren't just persons he happened to meet in Mayapur or in Puri, wherever. They were actually with him, they came with him to enact his purpose of appearing before us in this world. And the deepest aspect there is not just the external manifestation of delivering the Yuga Dharma, spreading Krishna consciousness, but the actual, let's say, inner experience, the internal aspect of the Lord's appearance in this world, to experience the highest form of bliss, of nectar. And he appears in this form. Sometimes we think that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an expansion of Radha and Krishna, or of Krishna in the mood of Radha, which is, of course, you could say in one sense, quite correct in one sense, but it's not completely correct. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is eternal. It's not that he appears, and he appears, you could say, in the vision of relativity at certain points of time, but on the absolute platform there is no question of when he appeared or where he came from. He's an eternal form of the Lord, eternal mood of the Lord, as much as Radha and Krishna, they've existed eternally, just different moods. And they go on simultaneously, and the Lord's eternal associates, his internal associates, they generally expand according to their particular mood into each and every expansive pastime of the Lord. They may appear in different forms, they may be recognized or not recognized, but they expand to assist the Lord. It's just like when we go, maybe we go on a holiday or something, we go with all of our various, whatever we are, basically speaking, our attachments, our desires, our tendencies, and so on. They may not manifest because the situation does not require, demand, or not even appropriate for that situation, but they're within us. And if necessary, that particular aspect of our personality will manifest. So the Lord also, these internal associates are basically expansions of Him, or expansions of His internal potency, just simply to facilitate His desires, to facilitate His purposes. So Ramananda Roy is one of the most confidential and the highest form of love of God, as we'll see, appearing in Chaitanya Leela in a unique way, hidden way in many cases. You could say people did not recognize him in general for what he is. They would see him as a very pious, religious king, not king, but a governor under the king, and a very learned man, upright, and so on, but not in his constitutional relationship with Radha and Krishna, for sure. So we're going to read tonight, or hear tonight, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, some of the interactions between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy. As it's his Tirobhav today, the day that we honor his departure, when he closed his pastimes in relationship to this world. But of course it's left in documented form, to a large extent we find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita particularly. One of the reasons being, not one of the reasons, of course, it's an absolute reason. There's enough reasons to say, but Raghunath Das Goswami, who resided in Puri for a long time and was under the guidance or under the shelter of Swarup Damodar, basically speaking, but he also had a lot of association with Ramananda Roy, and it was Raghunath Das Goswami who basically revealed in Vrindavan the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates in Puri to all the devotees in Vrindavan, including Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, who recorded these, words of Raghunath Das in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, Jai, with no further ado, we'll begin. I don't expect we'll finish in the time we have. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So I'm just taking certain verses. I'm not mentioning where they are. They're in the chapter Lord Chaitanya and meets with Ramananda Roy. It's a long chapter. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think, I'm not sure which chapter it is, chapter 8 maybe. Let me just see. Yeah, chapter 8. In Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's final pastimes, Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar always engaged in reciting suitable verses from Srimad Bhagavatam and other books to pacify the Lord's ecstatic feelings of separation from Krishna. Now, in this verse, we can get a general understanding of what devotional service is, at least to some extent. It means to live to fulfill the desire of Krishna, his inner mood. And a devotee will dress, talk, think, react, everything spontaneously, automatically, because a pure devotee is completely in harmony with the Lord's will, or his heart's desires, and even the songs they sing, the melodies they sing, the instruments they use, their dancing, their dressing, everything is exactly to facilitate, to enhance the Lord's inner moods. We may have a little experience of this in relationships in this world, when we want to achieve something, we try to dress appropriately and behave appropriately to achieve that purpose. But that purpose is always to satisfy our own desires. That same mentality, when transferred wholly and solely without any selfish motivation to fulfilling the Lord's desires, transforms from lust into love. Love means when only Krishna's desires are our motive, our purpose for everything. In the material sense, the motive purpose is to satisfy our own material, or at best mixed desires, to say enjoy, or feel comfortable, or feel peaceful, or satisfy ourselves, whatever it may be. But on the spiritual platform, that doesn't exist. So everything Ramananda Roy or Swarup Damodar or any of the pure devotees appear to be doing is exactly what brings pleasure to Krishna. Everything. The way they dress, the way their hair is, the way their colors are, they'll do anything to bring pleasure to Krishna. And that's the essence of this, you could say, this interaction which we're about to hear. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, we take off. In the first verse, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is known as Gauranga, is the ocean of all-conclusive knowledge in devotional service. He empowered Ramananda Roy, who may be likened to a cloud of devotional service. This cloud was filled with the water of all the conclusive purports of devotional service and was empowered by the ocean to spread this water over the sea of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Thus the ocean of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became filled with the jewels of the knowledge of pure devotional service. So Ramananda Roy, his position here is to be that, you could say, that instrument, that vessel to which the Lord poured it came from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, but poured the nectar from Lord Chaitanya was poured over him by Ramananda Roy. It's like an abhishek. You take water, or offering water to the Ganga, sometimes the example is given. You take water from the Ganga and you offer it to the Ganga. So the water belongs to the Ganga in the first place, but it is a matter of our consciousness. So in this case, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became filled with the jewels. And every time you see this pastime in different ways going on with the Lord and his devotees, how the Lord gives the devotees, even when the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took initiation from Keshava Bharati sannyasi, gave him the mantra and then he gave it back to him. The same example is indicated here, is that the ocean provides water into the clouds. The clouds rain the water down on the mountains, forming rivers, and the rivers flow back to the ocean. The rivers get their water from the ocean, and it's not that the ocean is being filled by the rivers exactly, it's a circular motion. Everything comes from Krishna, and our business to give it back. In this way, it's a constant flow of reciprocation. Shortly after Mahaprabhu's arrival in Puri, he decided to travel to South India. Before leaving, he was in Jagannath Puri, and he was only there for a few months. He converted Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, of course, who was a bit of a monist, into a pure devotee. And Sarvabhauma was very, you could say, distraught when Lord Chaitanya decided shortly after arriving that now he was going to leave for South India. And he was away for years, 2 to 3 years at least. He went traveling in South India. But before he left, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya approached him and made a request. He said, in the town of Vijayanagar, on the bank of the Godavari, there is a responsible government officer named Ramananda Roy. Even though he is considered to be a Shudra, please do not neglect him. No one can compare to him in the knowledge of transcendental mellows. He is the most advanced devotee. Previously, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had belittled him because he was, one thing, first of all, he was born in what's called a Kayastha family. Kayasthas are generally considered, they don't really have any specific caste in terms of Kshatriya, Brahmin, Vaishya, Shudra. So they're kind of considered to be Shudra in general. In some places they're considered to be other. They're usually very, very intelligent people. But for some reason, this particular line of Kayasthas have no particular caste in terms of the caste system or the Varna ashram system. But they often take positions of leaders, lawyers, doctors, very qualified positions in society, at least in most parts of India. And he was born in such a family, so he was generally considered, in Orissa at least, as a Shudra. So, but he was so very qualified, and he was engaged or employed by King Prataparuda, who engaged him. He was so responsible and expert. He engaged him as a governor of a large portion of his kingdom, particularly in the south. Much of Andhra Pradesh and present-day Tamil Nadu was governed by Ramananda Roy. So he was very expert in his service, and his headquarters was in a town called Vidyanagar on the banks of the Godavari, which is now in Andhra Pradesh. So then after Sarvabhauma was converted by Lord Chaitanya, then he could realize, because Ramananda was a Vaishnava, and Sarvabhauma looked down on Vaishnavas as sentimental fools. So not only was he a Shudra, but he was a sentimental Vaishnava, so he looked down on him. But then when he was converted himself, then he could fully appreciate the advanced state of Ramananda Roy. And he suggested, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please go there. Please associate with Ramananda Roy. I think you'll find this most satisfying. So he went there. And on the banks of the Godavari, he inquired. He saw a regal-looking person accompanied by many persons, including brahmanas, almost like a royal entourage approaching. So he inquired, Mahaprabhu then inquired whether this person was Ramananda Roy, and he replied, "Yes, I am your very lowly servant, and I belong to the Shudra community." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then embraced Ramananda Roy very firmly. Indeed, both master and servant almost lost consciousness due to ecstatic love. It was like they never, in this particular, you could say, past times up to now, had not literally met externally, but immediately, of course, they are reconnecting. Sometimes that happens in life. It's like you meet somebody, you know them from somewhere, but you don't know where. But in this case, it's not known to others, but of course Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy knew exactly what was happening. Their natural love for each other was awakened in them both, and they embraced and fell to the ground. This was quite something for all of the other persons around, that here is an effulgent-looking sannyasi, young sannyasi, embracing a governor who is, from a caste point of view, is considered a Shudra. So they're quite something, and they're rolling in ecstasy. And the reason being is, of course, as we mentioned earlier, that Ramananda Roy is one of the eternal, internal, confidential associates of the Lord, who simply expanded in every pastime to facilitate the Lord in his particular purposes. And in this case, as Ramananda Roy, but in Krishna Lila, he is none other than Vishaka. Vishaka and Lalita Swarup Damodar is considered as Lalita, and Ramananda Roy Vishaka, whose business is to always magnify, facilitate, and to serve whatever is bringing pleasure to the Lord. That's their sole existence. Sometimes Prabhupada says he's sometimes known as Lalita. Again, we're talking of different moods here, and this is sometimes quite perplexing, how apparent personalities, which this cannot be explained as long as we're on the bodily platform of life, identifying ourselves with a specific body. But the different moods with Haridas or whatever it is, how sometimes Prahlad Maharaj is there, and sometimes Lord Brahma is there, and others also. And the mood of that particular associate of the Lord is manifesting at a particular time. So Lalita and Vishaka Devis, they both are bringing absolute pleasure, you could say, in Radharani's relationship with Krishna, but they have different moods. So sometimes this, sometimes that. But we'll go on. Time is short. Let's see. Lord Chaitanya, then they interacted. He explained what Sarvabhauma had said. Indeed, then he said, I have come here just to meet you. It is very good that even without making an effort, I have gotten your interview here. So, because he never made any effort, in one sense, Ramananda Roy, guided by the love, happened to turn up at that particular place. You could say guided by the Lord in the heart, but it's Lord within, Lord without, but it's by love. The Lord, let's see what happened here. Then Ramananda Roy, very, very humbly, considered himself totally unworthy, and so on and so forth, and was glorifying Sarvabhauma. The Lord replied to Ramananda Roy, Sir, you are the best of the topmost devotees. Therefore, simply the sight of you has melted everyone's heart. Although I'm a Mayavadi, Lord Chaitanya calls himself a Mayavadi sannyasi. In one sense, you could say that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, because everything, in a sense, is him or his energy. Everything. We're living entities, all various types of energies. So in one sense, he is one without a second. So if you look at it from another angle, yes, he is everything. And he is God. So he kind of can say that to a certain extent, although that's not the mood. But he says here, I am a Mayavadi sannyasi. He took sannyas from Keshava Bharati, who was in the disciplic succession of Mayavadis. So he considered himself also, in that sense, initiated into the Mayavad line. I am a non-devotee. I am also floating in the ocean of love of Krishna simply by touching you. Because I've touched you now I'm feeling love of God. And what to speak of others? Sarvabhauma told me this may happen. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then ordered Ramananda Roy. They interacted, loving exchanges, but we don't have time to read this. But we're going to read the interaction which then developed. And it's a very deep, and it's complete in all respects in terms of the path of perfection from whatever state we're in, particularly those in a human form. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Ramananda Roy, please recite a verse from the revealed scripture concerning the ultimate goal of life. And there are many answers given here, and I don't expect you to get them in order. But he started off one by one, because it's involvement to the ultimate goal of life doesn't usually happen on the spot. Nothing is impossible by the grace of the Lord. But usually there's a process, there's a gradual elevation. And the Lord gives verses or statements in Shastra and by his own words in Bhagavad Gita to facilitate, you could say, the different levels of maturity of the living entities to try to help them to progress to a higher stage. So the first answer Ramananda Roy gave to Lord Chaitanya was, if one executes the prescribed duties of Varna Ashram, he awakens his original Krishna consciousness. This is the beginning of human life. Is there any society that does not have Varna Ashram, which is generally speaking considered to be proper religious principles, is an animal society. It's not really human. So the first answer was a basic one for human beings. They should follow not just Varna Ashram, of course they should follow Daivi Varna Ashram, but at least they perform their prescribed duties according to the Shastric direction, according to the social position or their nature, etc. And this is the first step for a human being, in a sense, in practical step, to progress towards self-realization. We follow our prescribed duties. Lord Chaitanya said this is external. Of course it's external. It's related to the bodily condition of life and the mental proclivity of the living entity. Better you tell me of some other means. Then Ramananda replied, to offer the results of one's activities to Krishna as the essence of all perfection. And we see that in the Bhagavad Gita, Yat Karoshidashnasi Jahusidadasi, and so on. You offer it to me. But Lord Chaitanya rejected this as well. He said, this is also external. Because, you're thinking these are results of my work. I'm going to offer this to Krishna. It's still based upon a material identity. It's still a material kind of interaction, you could say. It's a step further. He's coming into karma yoga. No doubt about that. But Lord Chaitanya rejected it. And so, please proceed, speak further. So then Ramananda Roy said, to give up one's occupational duty in the Varnashram system is the essence of perfection. What he meant was to renounce, if you could say, Sarvadharma and Parityagya to a certain extent, give up all Varnashram, which is one of the meanings of that verse, and completely surrender to me. It doesn't necessarily indicate that here, but to give up social positions, basically to take sannyas, to vanapras sannyas, to separate and just focus on spiritual practice. And Lord Chaitanya rejected that and said, go and say something more. Go ahead. And then Ramananda Roy replied, devotional service mixed with empiric knowledge is the essence of perfection. In performing devotional service with knowledge, Sambandha Gyan, you could say, knowing one's spiritual position, I'm not this body, and so on and so forth. But it's still not satisfying to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He maybe even, Ramananda Roy even indicated the verse Mam Chayovya Vicharana Bhakti Yogena Sevatani, also Ishvara Sarva, no, is it go? Ishvara Videshati. No, what's that verse in the 18th chapter? Brahmabhuta Prasanatmana Shochatina Kankshati Samaksavesha. To come to the spiritual platform, knowing that we're not this body, no more hankering, no more lamentation, and so on. All stages, no doubt, of self-realization or God-realization. But Lord Chaitanya was still not satisfied. And after hearing this, the Lord, as usual, rejected it, considering it to be external devotional service. It's not internal, it's external. One is not disturbed in duality, one and identifies oneself as not being the body, but being some spiritual being, and above the modes of nature, but it's still not really internal. It's not the perfection of life. He again asked Ramananda Roy to speak further, and Ramananda Roy replied, pure devotional service without any touch of speculative knowledge is the essence of perfection. And this is the beginning, you can say, of the conversation when the internal aspect, which is the goal. We're not here just to be on the external platform forever. You can't jump into the internal, but you have to obviously go through the stages. And this is the stage, pure bhakti, devotional service. Anyabhilasita shunyama, famous verse, jnana kamadyanavatam. Devotional service has to be pure without any other motivation other than satisfying Krishna. So we're practicing that now. Sadhana Bhakti in its different stages. We're practicing that now, but we can all see that we've still got some, let's say, other ideas. We've still got, it's not anyabhilasata sunyam. We still have other desires, which is obstacles which are holding us back in our spiritual paths. Whether they're desires for self-satisfaction, subtle or gross, desires for liberation, desires for freedom from suffering, whatever the desires are, they are self-centered. They're not focused entirely on pleasing the Supreme Lord. So then he quoted a famous verse, which is really where the transformation begins between devotional service, which is still mixed with our own desires, and devotional service, which is unmixed, pure. And he quotes this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is in the 10th canto Bhagavatam, chapter, I think it's in the chapter Lord Brahma's prayers, isn't it? It is, Jnane prayasam udapasya namante heva jivanti sanmukharitang bhavidya stane stita shritikatam tanuvan manobhir ye prayasho jitajito pyastitais trilokyam. Very famous verse. Ramananda Roy continued, Lord Brahma said. So many important verses in that chapter. And Prabhupada finished on the chapter before, but didn't really, I mean, he continued in a way. He guided others, but it's amazing that next chapter is full of so many important verses, so many. Samasritaye Padapalavaplavam, so many verses are there. My dear Lord, those devotees who have thrown away the impersonal conception of the absolute truth and have therefore abandoned discussing empiric philosophical truths. Previous statement also included maybe a little bit of the impersonal understanding, a little bit of, Brahmavadi, a little bit of knowledge, empiric philosophy and so on. Throw that away. They should hear from self-realized devotees. This is the secret. Hearing from self-realized devotees about your holy name, form, pastimes, and qualities. They should completely follow the principles of devotional service and remain free from illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and animal slaughter. Surrendering themselves fully with body, words, and mind, they can live in any ashram or social status. Indeed, you are conquered by such persons, although you are always unconquerable. And that's basically what Srila Prabhupada is giving. And it's basically this movement. It's just a matter of refining, perfecting, purifying, maturing, whatever it may be. But the process is there. Fully engaged in devotional service. We give up these sinful activities. We're hearing from a self-realized devotee. We're surrendering our bodies, mind, and words entirely in the service of the Lord. It doesn't make any difference which ashram you're in. Isn't that basically what Prabhupada has given? In practical sense of the term, isn't it? Fully engaged. He wanted us to be 24 hours engaged in service. That's what he wanted. Not that's what he wanted, that's what we want, but we don't realize it. We still think that we can be happy otherwise, and we try to do other things. But that's part of the step-by-step process of realization, that we do like that. But this stage is the stage of transformation, where we realize that I only exist to serve Krishna. I have no other purpose of existence. That's where real happiness lies. It's a hard one to get around, and most people in this world cannot digest it. It's beyond our present capacity to digest. So we have to go through various stages to come to that, usually. Although in the presence of a pure devotee, sometimes it's evoked immediately. We could see Srila Prabhupada was able to evoke that immediately. Persons would come to Prabhupada with all kinds of nonsense, all kinds of baggage, and Prabhupada would immediately empty their bag and fill it with Krishna consciousness, sometimes on the spot. Persons would give up all their illicit activities, give up all their, maybe not internally entirely, but externally at least, give up their occupations, give up their life, everything, and just surrender on the spot and be engaged 24 hours a day in devotional service. On the spot. I mean, literally on the spot. Now we take a long time sometimes, but it was, in the association of Prabhupada, it was like to be, boom, almost immediately. I don't know, different devotees had different experiences, but many devotees were like that. It was such a transformation. And they do anything for Prabhupada, on the spot, basically. We've just been reading the book, what's it called, of Gargamuni, one book by Gargamuni, alias Swami, about his experiences with Srila Prabhupada, in his service to Prabhupada. I mean, it wasn't exactly on the spot, it took a little while, but he pretty few hours maybe, but he pretty much surrendered on the spot. And that was it, he never went back, he just didn't go back, full stop. He was a student in some university somewhere, and his father was a big manager of factories, businessman, and he was about to go to San Francisco to join the hippie revolution, but his brother Bruce Ramananda told him, come and meet a Swami, a far-out Swami in New York. And he went over, and pretty much on the spot he surrendered, pretty much. Gave everything up, didn't turn back. Didn't even bother to go back to get his possessions. That's what it was like. Didn't care, didn't need nothing. You got everything. So this is the beginning. Lord Chaitanya at this point replied, this is all right. So he kind of accepted this. This is the gateway, you could say. This is the beginning of the perfection, the real beginning. You've kind of reached the door now. You were preparing to reach the door. Now you've reached the door. Now go in and tell us what's inside. But still, you can speak more on this subject. Ramananda Roy then replied, ecstatic love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the essence of all perfection. Bhava Bhakti, ecstatic love. Everybody wants the bliss, the ecstasy. Say, yes, say pleasing to Krishna, you're in ecstatic love. So this is, actually Prabhupada writes, this should be the result of sadhana bhakti. Must be, it doesn't say should be, it says must be. The result of sadhana bhakti must be ecstatic love. Not should be, must be. If we're actually practicing sadhana bhakti, that's what will happen. It's not that we're, I want the ecstasy, I want the ecstasy. I want the ecstasy right now, what's going on here? It's the result of when our devotional service becomes anyabhilasita shunyam, free to get thinking we can get pleasure from anything else, then automatically it manifests. You don't have, it's not like a separate endeavor. Attachment, ecstatic love, attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are automatic results of actual proper execution of sadhana bhakti, ultimately. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activities in hundreds and thousands of lives. It can be attained by paying one price. Who knows what that price is? How much is it? How much does pure devotional service cost? You've got your checkbooks ready? I learned that verse some year or so ago, and I haven't used it since, so I've forgotten it again. Yeah, intense greed to obtain it. That lolium, eka lolium. One thing, intense greed. That intense greed to obtain pure devotional service. If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay. In other words, we're saying, wherever it's there, that's where we should be. We should be. That's what will only satisfy the soul. And doesn't Bhagavatam emphasize this from beginning to end? This is the only real business, our only satisfaction, when our devotional service is completely pure and unmotivated, which means wholly and solely to bring pleasure to Krishna. Somewhere must purchase it. So then, Prabhupada says, henceforth the basic principle underlying the talks between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy will be spontaneous loving service to the Lord. The regulated principles, according to the injunctions of Shastra, are necessary insofar as one's original dormant Krishna consciousness is not spontaneously awakened. They're necessary. An example of spontaneous action is the flowing of rivers into the ocean. Nothing can stop this flow of water. If you put a barrier there, it'll move until it finds another way. The way it works. Similarly, when one's dormant Krishna consciousness is awakened, it spontaneously flows to the lotus feet of Krishna without impediment, because water flows down. You don't generally, maybe there's some exceptions, I don't know, where water flows up. Does it flow up? Maybe some abnormal situation can cause that, I don't know. You can say, it's being evaporated, but that's not quite the same thing. But the river flows down naturally to the ocean. So that flow goes down to the lotus feet of Krishna without impediment. Whatever will be spoken henceforth by Ramananda Roy based on spontaneous love will be agreeable to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Lord will ask him more and more about this subject. So in reply, Lord Chaitanya then said, okay, here up to this point of spontaneous love, the Lord said, that's all right, but if you know more, please tell me. Ramananda Roy said, spontaneous loving service in servitude, as exchanged by master and servant, is the highest perfection. This is probably, at least theoretically, understandable by most persons who have some God-centered understanding. I am the servant, he's the master. We may not know what it means in practical terms, but the principle is probably quite understandable. Lord Chaitanya said, please go a step further. He wanted to move on. Ramananda Roy then said, loving service to Krishna rendered in fraternity, which is friendliness, intimate friendliness, is the highest perfection. The Lord said, this statement is very good, but proceed, please proceed even further. Ramananda Roy then replied, loving service to the Lord in the parental relationship is the highest perfectional stage. And we'll find different devotees, for them, these stages are the highest perfection. Even the impersonal stage, the material relationship with God, prior to the transformation period. For many people, that's the highest perfection, heaven, going to heaven, pious activities, religious practices, and others to merge into the Brahma Jyoti. In this case, the highest is parental affection. Some devotees, we have what is the Balaba Sampradaya, they're very much in that mood, worshipping Krishna as baby, Balagopal. And others in the mood of service, like Vaikuntha, Ramanujacharya, the service master, service mood, like that. The Lord said, this statement is very good, but please proceed even further. Ramananda Roy then replied, loving service to the Lord. Oh, we've read that. Then he said, your statements are certainly getting better and better, one after the other, but surpassing all of them is another transcendental mellow, and you can speak of that as the most sublime. Ramananda Roy then replied, conjugal attachment for Krishna is the topmost position of love of Godhead. Conjugal. And this is generally not something which is understandable for anyone who's got any lust or any material concept of God or God's energies practically. Because immediately we start thinking of illicit sexual behavior. That's the tendency, which is the underlying, you could say, bondage which keeps us in this material consciousness or material world. It is true that whatever relationship a particular devotee has with the Lord is the best for him. Still, when we study all the different methods from a neutral position, we can understand that there are higher and lower degrees of love. More intensive. It's sugar, but it's more refined, it's more condensed. As the qualities increase, so the taste also increases in each and every mellow. Therefore, the qualities found in Shantaras, Dasyaras, Sakyaras, and Vatsalyaras are all manifested in conjugal love. They're all contained therein, but much more also. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is said that Lord Krishna cannot proportionally reciprocate devotional service in Madhurya Ras. Therefore he always remains a debtor to such devotees. Even he can't repay the love of those in Madhurya Ras. Lord Chaitanya then replied, this is certainly the limit of perfection, but please be merciful to me and speak more if there is more. Ramananda replied, until this day, I did not know anyone within the material world who would inquire beyond this perfectional stage of devotional service. And he goes on, among the loving affairs of the gopis, Srimati Radharani's love for Sri Krishna is topmost. Indeed, the glories of Srimati Radharani are highly esteemed in all revealed scriptures. Lord Chaitanya replied, please speak on. I'm very happy to hear you because a river of unprecedented nectar is flowing from your mouth. Where's the shutter tonight? Where's the shutter? Where's our shutter? Where is he? Where's Vishnu? Huh?
We don't know where he is.
He was here for Arti. They are beyond compare within these three worlds. Please, therefore, hear. Lord Chaitanya said, please speak more. Ramananda Roy continued, please, therefore, hear from me about the glories of Srimati Radharani's loving affairs. They are beyond compare within these three worlds. There's nothing to relate with them, beyond any compare. And he goes on to describe various aspects of Radharani's sublime and specific service, or her relationship. After hearing all of this, Lord Chaitanya said, "That for which I have come to your residence has now become an object of truth in my knowledge. Now I have come to understand the sublime goal of life and the process of achieving it. Nevertheless, I think there is something more ahead, and my mind is desiring to have it. Kindly explain the transcendental features of Krishna and Radharani. Also explain the truth of transcendental mellows and the transcendental form of love of Godhead. Kindly explain all these truths to me, but for yourself, no one can ascertain them." Ramananda Roy replied, "I do not know anything about this. I simply vibrate the sound you make me speak. I simply repeat like a parrot whatever instructions you have given me. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Who can understand your dramatic performances? You inspire me within the heart and make me speak with the tongue. I do not know whether I am speaking well or badly." Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "I'm a Mayavadi in the renounced order of life, and I do not even know what transcendental loving service to the Lord is. I simply float in the ocean of Mayavad philosophy. Due to the association of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, my mind became agitated. Therefore I asked him about the truths of transcendental loving service of Krishna. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told me, I do not actually know about the topics of Krishna. They are all known only to Ramananda Roy, but he is not present here." Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "After hearing about your glories, I have come to your place, but you are offering me words of praise out of respect for a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. Whether one is a Brahmin, a sannyasi, or a Shudra, regardless of what he is, he can become a spiritual master if he knows the science of Krishna." Famous verse spoken by Lord Chaitanya to Ramananda Roy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "Please do not try to cheat me, thinking of me as a learned sannyasi. Please satisfy my mind by just describing the truth of Radha and Krishna." Ramananda Roy was a great devotee of the Lord and a lover of God. And although his mind could not be covered by Krishna's illusory energy, and although he could understand the mind of the Lord, which was very strong and intense, Ramananda Roy's mind became a little agitated. Ramananda Roy said, "I am just a dancing puppet and you pull the strings. Whichever way you make me dance, I will dance." It's almost exactly what Prabhupada said, huh? Markandeya Bhagavat Dharma. Same mood. "My dear Lord, my tongue is just like a stringed instrument and you are its player. Therefore I simply vibrate whatever arises in your mind." And they go on. Then he explains, the essential part of that love of God is called Mahabhav, transcendental ecstasy, and that ecstasy is represented by Srimati Radharani. And we're not going to read all of this. It's very deep, and you can read in Chaitanya Charitamrita if you wish, an expansion on what this Mahabhav relation, love of Godhead is. Little bit explained there. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then replied, "Now I have come to understand the truth of the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Nonetheless, I still want to hear how both of them gloriously enjoy such love." Ramananda Roy replied, "I don't think my intelligence goes beyond this." Ramananda Roy then informed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that there was another topic known as Prema Vilas Vivarta. "You may hear of this from me," Ramananda Roy said, "but I do not know whether you will be happy with it or not." Saying this, Ramananda Roy began to sing a song he had composed, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, out of the ecstasy of love of Godhead, immediately covered Ramananda's mouth with his own hand. Hari Bol. Jai Krishna Balaram. I'll just read a little bit of it, the translation. "O my Lord, you live in the forest of Govardhan Hill, and like the king of elephants, you are expert in the art of conjugal love. O Master of the universe, your heart and Srimati Radharani's heart are just like shellac, and are now melted in your spiritual perspiration. Therefore one can no longer distinguish between you and Srimati Radharani. That was another interesting thing in that book, Gargamuni. How he was with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada pointed out a painting, which was quite unique. You don't see it in ISKCON. I've never seen it anywhere. There's a painting of Radha and Krishna as one but two. It's a unique painting. You can't, it's like they're one body but two persons. Amazing painting. Prabhupada said that was his, of all the paintings, he said this one was the most, for him, the most, let's say, heart, brought the most to his heart of any other painting. And that's what this is talking about here. I've mastered the universe. Your heart and Srimati Radharani's heart are just like shellac. And when they're loving exchanges, they merge into like one. And are now melted in your spiritual perspiration. Therefore one can no longer distinguish between you and Srimati Radharani. Now you have mixed your newly invoked affection, which is like vermilion, with your melted hearts. And for the benefit of the whole world, you have painted both your hearts red within the great palace of the universe. Uniqueness, simultaneously one and difference. And Lord Chaitanya said, this is the limit of the goal of human life. Only by your mercy have I come to understand it conclusively. The goal of life cannot be achieved unless one practices the process. Now being merciful upon me, please explain that means by which this goal can be attained. Ramananda Roy replied, I do not know what I am saying, but you have made me speak what I have spoken, be it good or bad. I'm simply repeating that message. Actually, you are speaking through my mouth, and at the same time you are listening. This is very mysterious. Anyway, kindly hear the explanation of the process by which the goal can be attained. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna are very confidential. They cannot be understood through the mellows of servitude, fraternity, or parental affection. Actually, only the gopis have the right to appreciate these transcendental pastimes, and only from them can these pastimes be expanded. The happiness of the gopis, this is an indication what that is, increases 10 million times when they serve to engage Sri Sri Radha and Krishna in their transcendental pastimes. That is an essential, even on our stage, it's an essential feature of devotion. We may, what's this got to do with me? It's the same principle. What are they doing? They're not thinking, let me be with Krishna. They are seeing that Radharani is the epitome of pleasure to Krishna. He's his internal potency, his pleasure, Ladini Shakti personified, bringing unlimited pleasure to Krishna. So they want to arrange for Radharani all different wonderful arrangements so she can be with Krishna to bring him more pleasure. By nature, Sri Mata Radharani is just like a creeper of love of Godhead, and the gopis are the twigs, flowers, and leaves of that creeper, presenting various pleas, and so that's their greatest pleasure. That's their existence, is to make arrangements for that loving exchange. Presenting various pleas, and that's what devotees are doing. That's what devotional service is all about, facilitating everyone's engagement in Krishna's service. Presenting various pleas for the gopis, Srimati Radharani sometimes sends the gopis to Krishna just to enable them to associate with him directly. So on Radharani's side, she's trying to make arrangements for them to be with Krishna. She thinks that will bring more pleasure to Krishna. At such times she enjoys a happiness 10 million times greater than that she enjoys through her own association with Krishna. Lusty desires, I think this is Prabhupada's purport, I'm not sure, maybe not. Lusty desires are experienced when one is concerned with his own personal sense gratification. The mood of the gopis is not like that. Their only desires to satisfy the senses of Krishna. Among the gopis, there's not a pinch of desire for sense gratification. Their only desire is to give pleasure to Krishna, and this is why they mingle with him and enjoy with him, simply to bring him pleasure. And it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. How the pleasure that they feel when they see others, Krishna being pleased with others increases, and then Krishna's pleasure increases their pleasure. It's just ever, unlimitedly ever expanding spiral of ecstatic love. Well, I like to go on, but there's not much time. Ramananda Roy said, "You have come here just to show me your causeless mercy. Therefore stay for at least 10 days. Purify my polluted mind." Unfortunately, we're not on this platform. Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya couldn't stop. They wanted to go on for eternity like this. But we're not quite on that platform. We're already thinking, oh, I haven't taken prasadam, or I'm getting tired, or, well, it's 8 o'clock, I've got to go, time's up. All sorts of thoughts enter our hearts, unfortunately. The Lord replied, "Having heard about your good qualities, I have come here. I have come here to hear about Krishna from you and thus purify my mind. Now that I've actually seen your glories, what I heard about you is confirmed. As far as the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in a loving mood are concerned, you are the limit of knowledge." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "To say nothing of 10 days, as long as I live, I shall find it impossible to give up your company. You and I shall remain together at Jagannath Puri. We shall pass our time together in joy, talking about Krishna and his pastimes." I'm going to read it. You can stay or go as you wish. During that period, another day, the Lord inquired from Ramananda Roy. This is in the form of questions. These are perfect questions, perfect answers. Another book. "Of all types of education," Lord Chaitanya said, "which is the most important?" Ramananda Roy replied, "No education is important other than the transcendental devotional service of Krishna." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then asked Ramananda Roy, "Out of all glorious activities, which is the most glorious?" Ramananda Roy replied, "That person is reputed to be a devotee of Lord Krishna, enjoys the utmost fame and glory." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then asked, "Of the many capitalists who possess great riches, who is the topmost?" Ramananda Roy replied, he who is richest in love for Radha and Krishna is the greatest capitalist." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, "Of all kinds of distress, what is the most painful?" This is probably the most famous answer and question of these. Ramananda Roy replied, "Apart from separation from the devotee, I know of no unbearable unhappiness. Everything else is bearable, but separation from the devotee is not." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then inquired, "Out of all liberated persons, who should be accepted as the greatest?" Ramananda Roy replied, "He who has love for Krishna has attained the topmost liberation." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then next asked Ramananda Roy, among many songs, which song is to be considered the actual religion of the living entity? Ramananda Roy replied, "That song describing the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna is superior to all songs." And that's the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. On every level, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra fulfills all desires. It's the topmost. And at this level, we may not be on that level of understanding to bring the living entity to that platform. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further inquired, "Of many types of meditation, which is required for all living entities?" Ramananda Roy replied, "The chief duty of every living entity is to meditate upon the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, "Where should the living entity live, abandoning all other places?" Ramananda Roy replied, "He should live in the holy place known as Vrindavan or Brajabhumi, where the Lord performed his rasa dance." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, "Out of all topics people listen to, which is best for all living entities?" Ramananda Roy replied, "Hearing about the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna is most pleasing to the ear." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked, "Among all worshipable objects, which is the chief?" Ramananda Roy replied, "The chief worshipable object is the holy name of Radha and Krishna, the Hare Krishna mantra." "And what is the destination of those who desire liberation and those who desire sense gratification?" Ramananda Roy replied, "Those who attempt to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord will have to accept bodies like trees, and those who are overly inclined towards sense gratification will attain the bodies of demigods." Those who are devoid of all transcendental mellows are like the crows that suck the juice from the bitter fruits of the neem tree of knowledge, whereas those who enjoy mellows are like the cuckoos who eat the buds of the mango tree of love of God. And then Ramananda Roy concluded, the unfortunate empiric philosophers taste the dry process of philosophical knowledge, whereas the devotees regularly drink the nectar of love of Krishna. Therefore, they are the most fortunate of all. And I think we're coming to the end here. All the truths about my pastimes and mellows are within your knowledge, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Therefore, I have shown. He then showed his own personal form, this unique form. He's non-different than Radha and Krishna. You've seen that. I don't know how you can depict it, but there's a painting where Ramananda Roy is there, Lord Chaitanya is there in front of him, and then Radha and Krishna are simultaneously in the painting there. So he showed this form to Ramananda Roy. Actually, my body does not have a fair complexion, Lord Chaitanya said. It only appears so because it has touched the body of Srimati Radharani. However, she does not touch anyone but the son of Nanda Maharaj. I have now converted my body and mind into the ecstasy of Srimati Radharani. Thus I am tasting my own personal sweetness in that form. This is, you could say, the purpose of Lord Chaitanya's coming was to taste that ecstasy or that love of Radharani. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then admitted to his pure devotee Ramananda Roy, now there is no confidential activity unknown to you. Even though I try to conceal my activities, you can understand everything in detail by virtue of your advanced love for me. The Lord then requested Ramananda Roy, please keep all these talks a secret. Please do not expose them anywhere and everywhere. Since my activities appear to be like those of a madman, people may take them lightly and laugh. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, indeed, I am a madman, and you are also a madman. Therefore, we are on the same platform. Although they talked at great length about these pastimes, they could not reach the limit of discussion. Actually, these conversations are like a great mine, where from a single place one can extract all kinds of metals, copper, bell metal, silver and gold, and all touchstone, the basis of all metals. The activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are like condensed milk, and the activities of Ramananda Roy are like large quantities of sugar candy. Their meeting is exactly like a mixture of condensed milk and sugar candy. When they talk of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, camphor is added. One who tastes this combined preparation is most fortunate. The wonderful preparation has to be taken orally. If one takes it, he becomes greedy to relish it even further. By hearing the talks between Ramananda Roy and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one becomes enlightened with the transcendental knowledge of the mellows of Radha and Krishna's pastimes. Thus one can develop unalloyed love for the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna. The author requests every reader to hear these talks with faith and without argument. By studying them in this way, one will be able to understand the confidential truths of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes is most confidential. One can derive benefit quickly only by faith. Otherwise, by arguing, one will always remain far away. He was accepted as everything the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Prabhu can attain this transcendental treasure. I offer 10 million obeisances unto the lotus feet of Sri Ramananda Roy, because from his mouth much spiritual information has been expanded by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I have tried to preach the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's meeting with Ramananda Roy in accordance with the notebooks of Sri Damodar. Sri Ramananda Roy ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Okay, so that was just a brief overview of that long chapter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's meeting with Ramananda Roy. Hare Krishna. There are many other things in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about Ramananda Roy, of course, in Puri particularly. But we're finished now. Hare Krishna. 8, 10. So what are we going to do now?
Kirtan.
You do kirtan 24 hours a day. Never stop. But I meant in general. We're going to go back now and think what I need and what I would like to do and what, my needs in life, my goals. And don't forget this is the ultimate purpose of it all. Pretty hard if we're not even following the basics, isn't it? And the basics here is varnashram. Basic. Kali Yuga is very difficult, therefore Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was given this Sankirtan movement. But we still have to follow that, and that's also not often the case. Still attached. Sankirtan. Chanting the holy names. Manmada Bhava Mat Bhakto. Isn't that what Prabhupada emphasized here at New Mayapur? Sankirtan, he said, do Sankirtan here in New Mayapur. And always remember Krishna, worship Krishna, give everything to Krishna. He did want that. And we heard that from also in that book, Gargamuni, at the end, right in the end. It was funny, we were right here on your new chariot for the bulls. And we were having a little ride around New Mayapur on the back of the bullock. The bullocks pulling us, bullocks. And Namacharya just came then. And as I was reading the last section, he was talking about that, how Prabhupada wanted this principle of simple living and high thinking, that we live on the land, grow our own food, self-sufficient. That's what he wanted. We don't expect to see it overnight, but at least we should understand that's one of the purposes of ISKCON. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Okay, we've got to get on. A lot of chanting and hearing to do yet today.
When Chaitanya rejected all these steps, does this mean that he rejected them as the beginning of the goal, or just don't stop at that, don't forget the goal?
Well, let's see if we can give an analogy here. I can't think of a very good analogy there, but when you've got a highest goal and somebody gives you something lesser, say for instance you're at university and you ask the teacher, can you tell me the highest form of mathematics? And the teacher says, 2 + 2 = 4. What are you going to say? It's correct. There's nothing wrong with that. Excuse me, sir, but I learned that 25 years ago, when I was 20 years ago. I know that already. Can you say something more? Then he says, well, actually, 10 times 15 is 150. Very good, that's correct, but, that's not, he's on another level. He wants the highest, He's already reached that level. So Lord Chaitanya's, but that is relevant. I mean, 2 times 2 = 4 is absolute necessity. You cannot go further unless you know that. So if you don't, but it's not the goal. It's not the goal. It's not what Lord Chaitanya wants to bring out of Ramananda Roy, that's for sure. And if people think that's the goal, they won't go any further. That's the danger, which is what we see in general. In most cases, even in our own spiritual life, sometimes we put blockages there in our own movement, isn't it? You can't go further. It's almost like taboo. It's almost against the law to go one step over the line, which we do have to be careful, no doubt about that. If you're not ready, then you don't go forward. But, the point is that we should be going forward in spiritual life. And some whole religious organizations do not allow the adherents to go forward practically. It's blocked, finished, boom, chop. It's one of those things. But Lord Chaitanya doesn't want us to be locked. The whole Srimad Bhagavatam basically has been developed by Srila Vyasadeva to take us beyond So the conditional stages to the highest stage of unalloyed devotion, pure devotional service. Remove those blocks. Dharma, Bhota, Kuita, Votra, Paramana, Matsuram, Sadham. This Bhagavatam goes beyond all other processes which teach you anything but pure love of Godhead. It's aimed at that. Other things are important, but they're in relation. The goal of other things is to reach that goal. But you kind of have to know what the goal is, otherwise it's very difficult to progress. We haven't realized it. That's why Srila Prabhupada, he gave us the goal practically before the means, almost, with the Krishna book. Huh? It was like one of the first books that came out, the Krishna book, And even in 1966, Srila Prabhupada was preaching Chaitanya Charitamrita. 1966, the boys and girls knew nothing, next to nothing. You got to know the goal of life, otherwise, we waste our time. You know the goal, you got to know the means. Both have to be known. So they're both given in this way, the means. We follow in the footsteps of the eternal associates of Vrindavan. But when they appear in this world, they appear in a form which is sadhaka form, and they teach us the steps towards that. So those steps are indeed important. Like a baby step is not. What's the goal of a baby? You could say we don't have a goal. It's conscious, doesn't have a conscious goal beyond eating and sleeping practically. But in terms of, say, let's just growth, okay, it tries to stand up, it falls over. Oh, that's not the end, but it's certainly a stage which is important. Maybe it needs a little help, and mother or daddy is holding the hands, it falls over again, and gradually it learns to stand up. But that's not the goal. The goal then is to utilize that capacity to stand in various practical ways. The child doesn't know that. You don't even necessarily, at that stage, and it's not a good example in that way, but it is a stage, and you rise above it. You rise above that stage. You become capable of walking without any help. You walk and do things. So slowly, as we grow under the guidance of a pure devotee of the Lord, if we take that guidance, there is a process. But if we don't take the process or the guidance, then it's difficult to progress. If we remain on the mechanical process of devotional service forevermore, then we expect to stay in the mechanical stage, conditional stage.
I had a question, Maharaj, about just what you read. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentioned to keep these conversations secret. So my question is, if I understood it well, of course, so my question is just about how is that possible that we have access to it? Is
I knew someone was going to ask that one.
Is that against the injunction, or is not, or is just like to
What can you say?
over the rules just to taste?
It is confidential. I mean, it's very confidential. Even though we hear it, do we have access to it? Yes and no. We have access to the process that leads to it. But we can't enter in. You can't enter in, even though you've heard about it. It's not like that. It's very confidential. People may read it, but they will not understand it at all. We may hear about it, and we may aspire from it, but we've got to aspire in the right way too, not the cheap way. Prabhupada has made this available. Bhaktisiddhanta made it available to a certain extent. Actually, it's interesting, we were reading in Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav some month or two ago in India. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj would not let only certain disciples were allowed to read certain sections of the scripture. Even the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, he limited those who were allowed to read the sections dealing with, the most confidential pastimes of Radha and Krishna were limited. He didn't just, anyone can read it, but he would advise them not to. And we only read the outline there. We didn't go into the actual, you could say, substance of those levels of devotion, which are briefly mentioned and expanded much further in other scriptures. Prabhupada indicates that other scriptures, but one has to be on a certain level. We were here a few weeks ago, a month ago, how certain texts are only to be heard by those who are at least on the stage of ruchi, not on the stage of bhajana kriya. You may know about them, you may sometimes hear about them because the pure devotees do discuss them to a certain extent, maybe in explaining certain aspects of the Shastra, but to go into them, to enter into them, to imbibe them, to digest, one has to be on that higher platform, otherwise you'll get indigestion. Misunderstanding, quarrels will evolve, and offences, so many things can take place. They're confidential in different ways. Confidential in the sense that Krishna does not reveal that to you, and even if you read it, it doesn't really, it's no revelation, it's not there. It doesn't have any substance, it's just theory only. And if we think we're eligible, etc., then one can be, in deep water, in difficulty. But if the pure devotees speak, it is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. We don't just read that, by the way. It's like even Bhagavad Gita. I mean, the most confidential knowledge of the Gita is given at the end of the 9th chapter, at the end of the 18th chapter. But to come to that point, there's many, many other verses are there. You've got to go through it carefully. 10th canto of the Bhagavatam is not the first canto of the Bhagavatam, it's the 10th canto. You've got to go through carefully all the cantos of the Bhagavatam. We're reading this tonight, which normally we don't read, of course, because it's Ramananda Roy's Tirubhav. You have to go through the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita up to that point. So wade your way through the Adi Leela. And so on. And Prabhupada said Chaitanya Charitamrita is postgraduate study. Postgraduate. But, we're in the schools, so we should know. Our intention is to reach the postgraduate stage, I guess, isn't it? I presume. And we want to stay on the lower stage. We have a choice. But we should be aspiring for the higher stages. That's what will please Krishna most. That's what will please Prabhupada. Not that we imitate it, but you reach it. We don't please someone by just putting a label, I've got a degree, but if you actually pass the degree, your parents will be pleased. You come with a piece of paper, that's nothing. It has to be authorized. Then the parents are pleased. Hare Krishna. They've made it available, at least in brief synopsis. Damodar's Diaries, Ramananda Roy, Bhadra Raghunath Das, who was the servant assistant under the guidance of Swarup Damodar, got from Swarup Damodar all his confidential, whatever, shared it with the devotees in Vrindavan for hours and hours and hours a day. Only with the devotees, the specific devotees there in Vrindavan, not with the public. So we don't speak these things. It is there in Prabhupada's book, so if you're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, you're going to come across it anyway. Most temples, they read the Chaitanya Charitamrita every day, not most, but many, every day, so you read it through, and you really like we read what are we reading here? Namamrita. Some places, Lilamrita, we're reading that on Sunday. So like that, many temples read Chaitanya. We're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita on Saturday. You're going to come to this after some time if you haven't already reached it in your Chaitanya Charitamrita classes anyway, isn't it? You're not going to jump over it, are you? We're going to read it. So it's there. So pure devotees make it available in a way which is digestible, which is a way which is not, to try to avoid us committing offenses. They present it in such a way with warning, with care, with caution. Like you take a medicine, don't take too much or whatever it is. Take it like this. Understand it for what it is. Don't take it if you've got this problem and that problem. You're a doctor, isn't it? Sometimes medicine, you can't take it if you've got a certain ailment. If you're pregnant or if you suffer from some kind of other disease, the doctor tells you. So Prabhupada has given us those warnings. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Food for thought.